Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Uncensored CMO. Now we're talking about cosmetics, but not any cosmetics. We're talking about a $1 billion turnover brand that is smashing all the records and really taking over. So I'm delighted to be joined by Kory, the CMO. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. So I need to know, most importantly, how popular are you right now with your daughters?
Well, I was going to say this, right? I am insanely popular, right? So usually I go home, right? And it's usually, so Daddy, who have you had on the show? And I mention the name, who in my world would be somebody, I'll be, oh my God, I've got this person or whatever. And they go, who's that? What have they done? And I mentioned you're coming and I said, e.l.f. And they're like, oh my God. Meltdown. And then I got like about a 5-minute tutorial. Go, oh, Daddy, you do know my mascara and my gloss, and so literally, yeah, it's everywhere in my house. So this is great. So thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate your girls and we appreciate their loyalty to e.l.f. And there's them and all their friends. We're happy to support their makeup journey.
And there's a lot of them, which is great. Which is why you're doing so well, of course. So recently hit a billion turnover and valued at over 10 billion now, and that's all been achieved in the last 20 years, which is amazing. Now, before we come to the story, because I really can't wait to unpack it and find out about the journey you've been on, because it's been absolutely tremendous. Just give us a little bit of a background into you, because you've got some amazing experience in the beauty category. But tell everyone listening where you came from and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Well, if we go back to the beginning, I grew up in New York in a small town called East Meadow on Long Island. And the job that was most pivotal to my future career was working in a nail salon. And I was working in the nail salon to make money to pay my way to go to college, which was not something that happened in my family. So my dad didn't think I should have to go to college. Why can't you just work and make money? Isn't that what people do? Why are you saving money to go to school? So in this nail salon, one of our clients was actually the vice president of sales at LVMH.
No way. You picked the one nail salon with the vice president of LVMH.
That's
that is
right.
insane.
And she took a liking to me. She saw that in between clients, I was studying and reading books, and she knew I was going to go into Manhattan and go to school. And when I left the nail salon, she said, when you're ready, give me a call. So I go into Manhattan. I pick Pace University because it was located by Wall Street, and they had an affiliation with all the financial institutions. And I had dreams of working in a financial institution. So I started interviewing at these big financial firms, and I wasn't finding a mirror image of who I was. Everything felt a little cold and sterile, and things weren't being led by feelings and emotions, and it just wasn't aligning with my antenna. So I was a little bit down on things, and my dad had called me at one of these moments where I came back from an interview and my dreams were being shattered all around me. And he used to call me kid. So he said, hey, kid, what's going on? Why so down? I said, these interviews are just not turning out the way I want them to. And he said, are you ready to call Debbie Nuzzo yet? And I was like, Dad, I don't need your help. I got this. And of course, I needed his help. And I got Debbie's number and I gave her a call, and I got my first job in beauty at LVMH. And when I had gone to that interview, I go up into the office. It's all black lacquer and mirrors. And this woman at the front desk was like Snow White, perfect porcelain skin, beautiful red lips, heavy French accent. And when I walked in, the phone was ringing. She answered the phone. She goes, Parfum Givenchy. And that was it. My dreams in that moment were realized. And I took the job. In that time, I was in the sales department. So I worked in sales operations. I was doing sales figure reporting up to senior leadership. I was doing allocation. So I got a really good backbone in numbers and sales performance. I knew I wanted to do marketing. So my second job that I took was in brand management. And I moved into additional prestige brands, spent a couple of years doing that. And then I went to Shiseido, where I spent the bulk of my career working in their entrepreneurial division. So building some of the more designer, avant-garde, bold brands and businesses under the Shiseido umbrella. And I spent a long time there to really cut my teeth on how to build brands and businesses with a variety of different models. So no 2 days were ever the same. And I really loved this entrepreneurial vibe that it had. And that was always where my bend was. So then I went to Bare Minerals, which was their flagship brand in the US, and it was a transformation. So I spent 2 years doing the hardest thing I ever did in my entire life. And I really recommend that to anybody. Go do the really hard things. So that when I got the call from e.l.f., they were in a little bit of a trouble spot. Net sales were down for the brand for the first time. They had lost their way a little bit, and they were looking for a new impulse to their business, if you will. And I believe at the time, net sales were like -1. I had just come off like a -33-year CAGR. So I was like, oh, this is easy. I got this.
Yeah.
So I got the call for the e.l.f. job. And what I saw was an incredible brand that had limitless potential that wasn't really tapped into yet. And it was going to be a matter of really awakening the sleeping giant, if you will, going back to the treasure chest and the story of the founders and the beginning of the brand, and then infusing it with all the things I learned in luxury: colors, codes, cues, storytelling, emotion, captivation, compelling. So that's really I was able to take that luxury training and experience and bring it to the masses.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You talk so passionately about doing the more entrepreneurial thing as well in your career, which suddenly all makes sense, doesn't it, when you bring that experience over? For everyone listening and watching, tell us the origin story of how e.l.f. was created and what was it trying to solve? What was it trying to do?
So e.l.f. was started by a father-son duo, two gentlemen from Brooklyn. The son, Joey Shama, was graduating from NYU, and the dad had a dream of them getting into business together. And these are two entrepreneurs at their core. So they went around looking for a white space. They went to a dollar store. They realized there were very expensive cars parked outside of the dollar store. And they said, okay, already this is a signal. There are wealthy people here. So let's go inside and see, is there everything that they could get, or is there a white space opportunity? And they recognized that you could pretty much get everything in a dollar store except cosmetics. So they had this crazy idea that they could create prestige quality cosmetics and sell them for $1. The kicker was they wanted to sell it over the internet. I would remind you that this was 2004.
Wow,
this
2004.
is the 2004, which is the year Facebook launched and the iPhone doesn't exist yet. So everybody told them, number one, you can't do premium cosmetics for $1. It's not even humanly possible. 2, you certainly cannot sell color cosmetics over the internet. And 3, even if you figured out 1 and 2, you will never make this a profitable business. So they were born to disrupt the industry. They didn't listen to anybody. They carved their own path. And in the face of opposition and resistance and a sea of no's, they turned it into a yes, which is now $1 billion business, as you mentioned before. And we actually just had them at our company-wide offsite, and we asked them, did you ever imagine that e.l.f. would be here? And they're like, never in our wildest imagination did we think it would be $1 billion business. But the beauty of what they started and what we still are is true entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Bias for action. Speed, agility, nimbleness. No matter how big we are, I like to say we're still the mouse under the elephant's feet. You're never going to catch us.
And like, break down the model a little bit more for me as well. So how did they go about actually doing it? Because like getting a premium cosmetic that's as good as the leading brands for that price, that's a really hard thing to do. How do they crack that?
It's a tough nut to crack. I can't give you all my secrets.
Without giving away the trade secrets, of course, but
It is a very difficult task. And the other thing that a lot of people don't know is US FDA regulations say that there are only 11 ingredients that you cannot use in the creation of cosmetic and skincare. 11. We create with a palette of -3,000. The EU is minus over 2,000. So it's pretty exceptional that we have a higher level of standard and regulation. So we keep ourselves to that incredibly high standard. And the key for us is redefining what beauty means, how you create a business for it, how you create a market for it, and how you sell it. So at the time, it was really all about really going direct to consumer. We're going to sell this online. We're going to cut out all the middlemen. So any of the money that would have been put in margin depletion or anything like that there, we're going to give that savings directly to the consumer.
Yeah.
So that's always been baked into how we operate.
Now, I used to work at Pepsi for many years, and we obviously would do the Pepsi Coke challenge and blindfold people and go, can you taste the difference? And 7 out of 10 people would say they prefer Pepsi. So if I was to get your audience to try your cosmetics up against those premium brands that, let's face it, cost a lot more, how would they compare when they don't know which brand it is?
So you just need to watch a few TikToks. I'm sure your daughters can show you how to do that.
They discovered on TikTok, by the way. Just a little plug for TikTok there, but yes.
So most of the community that talks about e.l.f. on a continual basis will tell you it's better than. So it's not even equal to anymore. It's better than at a fraction of the price. So it's kind of like when you run into somebody at a party and they're wearing this beautiful outfit and they have on very expensive shoes and very expensive pants and very expensive jewelry. And you're like, oh, I love your top. And they're like, $5, I got it at Zara, right? They're wildly excited to tell you that they got a smart score. That's how it is with e.l.f. It's this, because everybody's going to tell you, oh my God, you look beautiful. Your makeup is holding. The performance is incredible. The pigment, the color, the payoff. And they're like, oh my God, $8 from e.l.f. when the, prestige equivalent is $40. Who doesn't want to have a 5x less price? So we're the smart beauty score. We're for people who know and are in the know.
Yeah, that's insane. Actually, is absolutely right as well. I can say from firsthand experience. Now, you and I were sat together, weren't we? While I was interviewing Scott Galloway, and he made a pretty provocative statement, didn't he, in his talk with me about the era of brand is dead. Obviously, you've built up a pretty amazing brand over the last kind of 5 years in e.l.f. What do you say to that kind of accusation of the era of brand is dead?
You fell right into the Scott Galloway trap.
I did. I know. I was going to let him have. Let him have one.
Everything he says is intentionally provocative.
I know. Exactly.
And it's a great gift because it gets us all talking.
It does, and it did.
And it did, and we're still here talking about it. I think there's a couple of things. So where I understood him coming from the conversation it's the era of product. And I think product is table stakes. If you are in consumer packaged goods business, you have to deliver a differentiated product that people are going to buy at the expense of every other product on the market, or you don't get a right to exist. And e.l.f. is the model of how we transcended product and have almost become an ideology. So if we just look historically for a second, when I joined the company 5 years ago, 6% of net revenue was being spent on marketing and digital. 6. So not really much investment in the brand. At the time, we actually had...
And what would the big brands do, just for comparison?
If you're in the luxury sector or over 30, 35, could even go up to 40%. If you're more in the mass sector, let's say around 25 to 30. So 6% is quite low. We were investing at that time in a retail network. So we had a little over 20 retail stores that were not really kind to the P&L. So the decision was made that this was the moment to shut down the retail operation and siphon the money into marketing to see what would happen at that stage of the brand's life cycle if we actually invested money in brand building. This is when I came into the building. So in 2019, we were investing 6%. We're now investing 25%. Okay, so over 5 years, we've significantly increased our marketing spend. Why? Because it's working. And the business went from 250 million net revenue to $1 billion in net revenue. And I think the key thing is you have to understand where you are in the life cycle and when is what needed. So I actually agree with Scott that product is critical. You see TikTok virality happening on a regular basis about the functionality of a product, the duplicity of a product, and all the different ways that people want to show you how they use a toothbrush to fill a hole in the wall, right? And, or even for our product, Power Grip Primer, for example, we see people putting in bowls and just playing with it like it's slime, not even actually putting it on their face to get the makeup benefit in some cases. So that is absolutely true. Product is absolutely key. The success over time and a brand's ability to have a rightful position for over 20 years, which is where we are now, we're just celebrating our 20th birthday, it can't just be about product. Product's not enough. You have to be able to transcend product to become a brand that people love. One of the things that I'm still mind blown by is people are inviting us, as in the people behind the brand, to the most important moments in their life. We get hundreds of invitations to people's weddings every week.
For real?
That's not about product.
Yeah.
They're not actually inviting us and saying, can you set up a makeup table and do makeup? They're like, e.l.f., you have been with me through every important moment in my life. You were there when I graduated. You were there when I had my first kiss. You were there. I would love you to come to my wedding. That doesn't happen if you're just selling good product.
That's very true. How do you stay close to your consumer? Because I think that this is one of the tricks here, isn't it? Because as you scale, what most companies do as they scale, they bring in layers of management and they bring in process and organization. And I mean, I've seen it in my own career. The closer I was to the consumer, everything made sense and it seemed obvious what happened. And then as soon as you build complexity, it seems to go away. But what's the secret of staying close to your consumer then?
So I think there's two things that I think are a forward-looking indicator of success for any brand. The first one is the distance between the C-suite and the community that they serve. The second one is the distance between insight and action. The shorter the distance, the greater chance for success in both of those cases. And I would bet on companies that have low to no distance. e.l.f. has zero distance between our community and our C-suite, which is incredible, and also zero distance between insight and action. So when you ask the how, it starts with me. And as the CMO of the company, I personally consume thousands of consumer comments every week and not in a report. I don't want to have a relationship with reports. I want to have a relationship with the people. I want to see what emojis did they use, what color, in what context. When somebody asks them a question, how did they respond? How do the lovers communicate with the haters? What do people not like about what we're up to? And you can only get that when you're in real time, operating in the conversation as people are talking to one another about your brand. So I personally consume that and I see things immediately and I will hang up and call our social media team and be like, they're all asking about Jamil's outfit. We got to tell them, what is she wearing in our commercial? So I have a direct loop in the organization of my team because I run end to end from concept all the way through community, where I can take an insight instantly, what somebody says about a product, likes it or don't, and bring it right back to the innovation team. Yeah. Or they want to know something about marketing, bring it right back to those folks, or some digital thing that's not working on our website, go right to our CDO. So the distance between me and our community is very low. And also, again, what they're saying and what we do about it. And I would take that in further into our C-suite. Last week, my CFO and I both got on a Twitch live stream and 13,000 people showed up to hear us talk about so many dicks. And it's pretty extraordinary to have a CFO and a CMO totally unscripted, just having a conversation with the community, reacting to them in real time. We do the same thing with our CEO. He comes on TikTok lives and listens directly to the community. That's the reason we did bronzing drops so fast.
Yes, you're telling me about this. Yeah, tell me what happened. Because not many companies, and certainly not many billion-dollar companies, get their CEO on TikTok Live. How did it come about?
He's done a couple of them. And in this case, the cry for bronzing drops was massive because there was a prestige equivalent that was out in market and it created this massive trend. And everybody that couldn't afford this high price point were screaming at us because they know we're like their savior. Well, e.l.f. will take down the red velvet rope and invite us all to the party. So whatever we would post, we posted about a mascara, they screamed for bronzing drops. We posted about our lip oil, they screamed for bronzing drops. And this was going on and on and on. We couldn't fast track the bronzing drops quick enough unless we get the CEO involved. So I walked down the hall into his office. This is a true story. Hey, Tarang, can you jump on a TikTok live with me? I'd like you to hear from the community. He goes, okay, what time? I was like, how about a half an hour? He's like, great. Jump on a TikTok live. 5,000 people showed up and all 5,000 were screaming at him for bronzing drops. He lasted about 10 minutes. And at 10 minutes, he goes down the hallway to the innovation team, opens the door, and he goes, make these people bronzing drops.
Please.
And we fast-tracked bronzing drops and were able to bring them to market in record time because we had the full support of everybody in the C-suite. So that is zero distance, zero.
Yeah.
Community asks the CMO, then they have access to the CEO, and they get what they want in record time.
Yeah. And it's so important to bring insight into the heart of the organization, isn't it? No, like you say, not through reports or outsourcing it to other people as well. Because I know some of the sort of tensions I've had in the past in organizations is seeing insight at the heart rather than kind of, on the edge of the organization. How do you organize yourself structurally around insights?
Well, one of the things I always love to ask folks about insights is where does it sit, to your point? And very oftentimes it sits in the COE, the Center of Excellence, which is the equivalent of collecting dust. In e.l.f., it is at the heart of everything we do. So our insights person not only strategically distills a vast amount of information, which is unbelievable these days, how much is coming at you from how many places. She strategically distills it into insights, and every Monday, she shares those insights with all of the business leaders. And I'm not talking about just managers or coordinators. I'm talking about C-suite executives, key leaders, and decision makers. So insights go directly to decision makers take it directly into action. And that is why we're able to move at such speed, because we're taking it as it's happening. We're working and our community is so funny because they'll write things like, e.l.f., are you in my bathroom? Were you at my house last night? Were you at my dinner table? Because that's how closely we're listening and then acting on it so quickly that they're blown away, that they feel like they are actually shaping the brand because they are.
Yeah. And how do you keep that agility in terms of product development as well? Because you got the idea, you got the feedback, and now you've got to get the bronzer to market, right? So how do you also deliver at speed? Because I think that's one of the challenges as businesses grow. They become much slower, don't they? And not as agile. How do you keep that agility in place?
Well, the beauty of e.l.f. is we're 20 years old and we're faster than we've ever been before. So if you have speed as a value, and for us, it's the combination of quality, cost, and speed. Those are all equally as important. If you have that as a value, if it's ingrained in every single person in the company, and then couple that with the fact that every single e.l.f. has an entrepreneurial spirit, it's actually not as hard as you think. And I want to just pause on this word entrepreneur for a minute because I think it's really important. And again, going back to our founders who were the OG entrepreneurs and how they set up this company to really be a forever entrepreneurial ship, is every single e.l.f., we call ourselves elves, every single e.l.f. is granted meaningful equity every single year. We believe that we are the only consumer packaged goods company publicly traded that offers equity to every single employee every year.
Everybody, top to bottom in the organization.
Single employee. Every single meeting you're in, you're not in a meeting with a colleague, you're in a meeting with a fellow shareholder.
Yeah.
That creates a passionate team of owners. And I want to actually put a numeric value on that to contextualize. Since e.l.f. went public, which was 2016, we've granted $179 million worth of equity to our employee base minus our C-suite. $179 million to our employee base.
That's insane, isn't it?
You know how many employees we have?
No, I don't.
Less than 500.
Wow. That's life-changing, isn't it?
It's life-changing.
Yeah, seriously.
When our CEO's number one ambition is wealth creation for his employees and their families.
Yeah.
That creates a passionate team of owners. A passionate team of owners, one person has the capacity with that kind of energy to do what 100 people can do in another company.
I love that. And I guess everyone's going to, rather than going, oh, it's not my problem, I'll pass it on to the next department, everyone's going to go, we've got to fix this, right? Or we've got to invent it, if it needs inventing.
Exactly.
Now, you talked at the beginning about going from 6% to 25%. How do you, so what have you invested in that's driven the growth that, you've seen today?
Sure. So the first at bat was, of course, to stay digitally native. So we were the OG digital disruptor in the beauty space, and we had a lot of work to do to go deeper just in that space alone. When I started 5 years ago, we were a one-legged horse only playing on Instagram.
Yeah.
So one of the key things was open the aperture and make sure that we're playing on a wide variety of platforms. So we have our primary platforms, our secondary platforms, and then our test and learn platforms. So we're in a constant state of learning, taking in as much synapses and signals as we can to figure out where's the next place we want to place our bets. If you don't have a lot of chips on the table, you have no idea where to place your bet next. So that was really key for us. Once we were able to build out each one of these platforms, completely diversify, build a wide community in a variety of places and spaces, then we asked ourselves, what else could we do outside of our current purview that would make waves, if you will, and bring e.l.f. to a new dimension of audiences. And that's when we decided to do our first big game ad, which is very unconventional. But when you break it down, it actually makes a whole hell of a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So at that time, we're a digital-only brand. We were taking all of our storytelling and all of our inspiration from the TikToks that people were making about our brand. And they were obsessed with the sticky value of this Power Grip Primer. Sticking brushes to their faces, books. How heavy of a thing can I stick to my face if I use Power Grip Primer? And it was hilarious. So we had this dream about turning that into a commercial. We didn't realize at that time that this commercial will go on this biggest stage that there is. So the next thing we asked ourselves, well, who's a culturally relevant icon right now in this moment that we would want to do that with? And at the time, White Lotus was at the height of its game. So we thought Jennifer Coolidge. Okay, great. Well, where could you put the stickiest star in beauty, Power Grip Primer, the stickiest cultural icon, Jennifer Coolidge? What stage would be big enough for this to make sense? We looked at the calendar, and in 3 weeks was the big game.
Wow. Oh, so you only did this 3 weeks before?
3 weeks. 3 weeks. So we shifted our mindset entirely. And the reason I tell you that is because you have to remember, you're talking to a team who's never done a national TV spot before. We've only been doing digital all this time. So that's the beauty of entrepreneurs. There is no mountain you can't climb. So we put our heads in the stars, dreamt about what we could do. And we looked at the data points and said, okay, well, who's actually watching the big game? Turns out 50% of the audience is women.
Totally. Yeah.
50%. So I'm like, well, who's talking to them? We analyzed all 104 commercials from the year prior. No one. So we showed up in a place where women were being underrepresented. And we came with a wave maker with this, stickiest star in beauty and the stickiest icon in culture. And the entire floor of our business just raised. It was like the tide that lifted all boats. And we proved that beauty belongs everywhere. Fast forward 1 year, there's a lot more beauty brands that showed up at the big game.
True. People really misunderstand the Super Bowl, isn't it? Because it is one of those things that everyone watches. You get a mass audience straight away. And like you say, I think sometimes people might pigeonhole you as a Gen Z brand, won't they? And go, well, of course you're digital native, but actually so many people, across. How does your demographic split up actually out of interest? Because I know it is kind of pigeonholed a bit as a Gen Z brand.
And part of that is our fault because we have so much data around being the number one brand for Gen Z. And that is true. And I'm very proud of it. 5 consecutive seasons, we've been number one with a Gen Z audience. We're equally as proud that we're also number one with Gen Alpha. We're number 2 with millennials, and we have a massive growing audience of Gen X, so and older. And if you think about coming to the first big game with Jennifer Coolidge, she's over 60. Second big game commercial, we came with Judge Judy. She's over 80. The last campaign we just dropped was with Billie Jean King. She's also over 80.
Yeah.
So we're getting floods of email and inbounds right now on a lot of people writing to us and saying, hey, e.l.f., I'm 65 and I love Power Grip Primer, H2O eyeliner, and your lip oil. Hey, e.l.f., I'm 75 and I wear the... So we're actually getting a ton of people saying, I thought you were my little secret now, everybody, but I don't find myself in your advertising. Yeah. So that was part of the reason why we made sure to showcase an ensemble cast of all different ages as well as diversity.
And not to mention, of course, the parents of all those Gen Z and Gen Alphas I can attest to.
That's right.
They're a big audience and they're benefiting from all the money saved as well. Anyway, just to put that out there.
So do you steal your daughter's face cream?
Yeah, secretly. I'm sure I'm actually 68, by the way, but that's how I look so young. But.
So that is another thing you were asking me, how we're investing our money. We moved into these other media forms that we had never done before. So it's almost the reverse.
Yeah.
Most brands do traditional media first, and then they come into the digital space. We went the other way around. We did all the emerging medias first, and then we went into TV and things of that nature. So we were getting a large number of inbound reporting on intergenerational cosmetic crime.
What? Go on, explain this.
This is a true story.
Yeah.
Every word out of my mouth is true, just for your audience to know. I don't even know how to lie. It's not possible for me. So all these letters kept coming in. e.l.f., help. My mom is stealing my O-Face. e.l.f, help. Grandma just took my Holly Hydration. And it didn't stop. And then we started to see it actually uptick. So then we started asking questions. What is going on in your house? They're like, they're onto it, e.l.f. The parents, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, they're onto it. They're wondering why they're spending $50, $60, $70, $80 insert high price point here when they try mine and they realize it's even better. So the parents were stealing the kids' stuff. So we decided to turn it into a 15-minute parody documentary called Cosmetic Criminals to actually bring these stories that we were hearing from our community to the big screen. And we aired it 15 minutes. Branded content, aired it in the movie theaters, first time we ever put ourselves on the big screen, and it was unbelievable. People lost their minds. Again, they think like, did you have a camera in my house? Were you spying on me? How did you know that? Everybody related because it's happening in their house.
Yeah. But anyone who's got like a house with daughters in will know exactly what's going on there. But actually, you strike me as being quite similar to another guest on the show, Mike Cesaro in Liquid Death. And you've done, in terms of your creating entertainment and building an audience, all that kind of thing, you've even done a collaboration, haven't you, with Liquid Death, which I absolutely loved. Because it's funny, because growing up in the 80s and being a kind of a bit of a rocker as I was back then, I know you wouldn't imagine it now, but like back then, like guys wore makeup. They didn't just wear makeup. They wore a lot of makeup in terms of the glam rock era. So I just saw like the collaboration was absolute frigging genius.
Thank you. The most genius part of it was that we launched Corpse Paint on a random Tuesday in March. Out of left field. Had we launched it on Halloween, people would have been like, oh, okay, maybe that makes sense. Yeah. It was a random Tuesday in March. So we really normalized the bizarre, if you will.
Yeah.
And it broke the internet, which was the entire goal from the beginning, is what happens when you take two disruptor brands and put them together, quite honestly, with no rules.
Yeah.
And we were pushing each other. And it was really funny because I was talking to Andy Pearson, who's their head of creative, and the whole team is just absolutely extraordinary. We love working with them, and they taught us a lot in the journey about a lot of things. And he had said that on set, we actually pushed them because, did you see the commercial?
Yeah.
There's the part when the mom comes in and she's holding the tray of drinks and she said, "Vegans, goat blood, anybody?" Yeah. They thought that was pushing the envelope, and that was actually our head of creative.
Liquid Death. That's
so it was just a truly exceptional collaboration. And this is what happens when you bring together kindred spirits. When you bring together people who are in two different industries, but on the same one-way path of disruption, and thinking about how to bring together culture, entertainment, and then our categories, right? So in this case, culture, entertainment, water, and beauty. Yeah. And the collision course was just absolutely explosive.
Yeah. I think it's one of those key secrets, any kind of challenger brand, isn't it? Is because you often haven't got the budget of the big established brands that spend the 40% and have got billions of dollars, But collaborating with other people, I think, is such a way of kind of multiplying your reach and, getting out. Have you done any other collaborations like that?
We did. Our first one back in 2019 was Chipotle.
Yes.
And that was when I had just started my time at e.l.f. So everybody thought I was elfing insane. I walked into the C-suite and I was like, we're going to do a collaboration with Chipotle. People's eyes popped out of their head. They're like, what? How does that even make any sense? And at the time, if you remember, TikTok had just busted onto the scene and very few brands were willing to play because what is this foreign agent UFO thing, and what are the KPIs, and how am I going to prove to management that this is going to work, and what's the ROI, and all the things that have to be true. And then everybody's over there building these long decks that they have to push up the flagpole. I was sitting around the swimming pool with my 17-year-old nephew at the time and his girlfriend, and I was asking them about their social media habits. And my nephew's girlfriend looked at me and he said, "Aunt Kory, Instagram is the place I go to feel bad about myself. TikTok is the place I go to be who I really am." I walked into the office Monday morning and I was like, guys, stop whatever you're doing. We need to create a campaign to break through on TikTok. And we created this original music track, Eyes, Lips, Face, and invited everybody to express their eyes, lips, face. And the song itself became a Billboard chart-topping hit. The key component here was not only were we not afraid to play on the platform, but neither was Chipotle. So every article for 6 months, all I saw was e.l.f, TikTok, Chipotle, e.l.f, TikTok, Chipotle, e.l.f, TikTok, Chipotle. And then I swear to God, one morning in the shower, I was like, e.l.f, TikTok, Chipotle. Went to the office. I'm like, who knows anybody at Chipotle? And they're all like, huh? And we got in touch with the team at Chipotle. We sat around the table. We were completing each other's sentences in the first meeting.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Kindred spirits sitting across the table. We had the same stories. We were on the same journey, on the same path, just in 2 different businesses.
Yeah.
And that collaboration wildly exceeded both of our expectations. So once we had that hit under our belt, the next one we did was Dunkin'.
Yeah.
And that was absolutely incredible. And we had fathers calling, crying, oh my God, you can't be sold out. My daughter didn't get hers. We were all packing up our own and sending it to people who were very devastated. Then we did American Eagle, which was absolutely incredible. We took their incredible codes and cues from their denim line and turned it into a beautiful collection. And then, of course, Liquid Death.
Brilliant. I love it. I think it's absolutely genius. And it's also what you do when you have slightly limited resources, isn't it? I mean, like, I know you've increased marketing spend as a percentage, but it's a great way of just getting out to more people, isn't it? And also overlapping your audiences, because, people that buy e.l.f. also buy Dunkin', also go into Chipotle and drink Liquid Death. We sometimes have this blinkered view of our audience being completely different to everyone else's.
Well, what I really loved about the comments that was incredibly encouraging to us, and if I go back to Chipotle, but it happened with all of them, is people were like, my favorite food brand and my favorite makeup brand are coming together. So it was almost like a nod and a respect to them that their worlds were colliding in the best possible way.
Yeah. I could have told you that. Lilia loves Chipotle and loves e.l.f. Honestly, it's just so familiar. This is hilarious. I want to jump, if I can, to talk a little bit about culture and how to be a great marketer as well. I loved how you've described the e.l.f. culture. I think it's really, really spot on. Can you unpack a little bit about how you define your culture and what it means
inside our organization?
Yes.
So we are a renegade spirit with a bias for action. We're big enough to do great things and small enough to be nimble. And as a challenger brand, you have to wake up every day and ask yourself, where is the path of most resistance?
Yeah.
Because the path of most resistance is the one that nobody's taken yet. And that's the one you have to go on to break through and be seen in a world that is increasingly noisy and saturated and covered by more advertising than any of us could ever possibly consume in our lives. So that disruptor spirit really defines what we do. So our vision is to really create a different kind of company, period. And we do that by building brands that disrupt norms, shape culture, and connect communities. And each one of those is really important because it's the filter by which all of us live, operate, hire, everything. First, different, the word different. That already defines the fact that we're not getting on the treadmill and doing things the way other people do them, which by definition means it's going to be way harder for us. I like hard stuff, in case you haven't noticed. Then disrupting norms, right? We're going to blaze a new trail, take a new direction, and take the path of the unexpected. Shaping culture is really important, and the word shaping matters because we're not out there in an ivory tower saying, we have all the answers in culture, come follow us.
Yeah.
We're also not behind chasing people. We're actually shaping it together with them. And our community feels that. They feel that they have a hand in shaping this brand because they do. And the third one is connecting communities. And this could be connecting the Liquid Death, Chipotle, e.l.f. dots, right? Bringing communities of people together that also love Liquid Death and also love the things that we love and also so on and so forth. And it means connecting like-minded communities. So we have a recent campaign called Show Yourself. Have you seen it?
Love that.
It's a beautiful campaign where we're showcasing how people turn adversity into triumph. Yeah. And that's connecting communities of people who are now so inspired by Anastasia Pagonis, who's a blind Paralympic swimmer. Yeah. So now you see these communities coming together, having that conversation. So connecting communities is critical. And then the last piece of it is everything we do it through positivity, inclusivity, and accessibility. each one of those words is really meaningful. Positivity describes itself. We're very optimistic in everything we do. Our cup is overflowing. Forget half empty, half full, it's overflowing. When you think about inclusivity, this means taking down the velvet ropes, unchecking boxes, inviting people to be their truest self all the time. We don't want to tell you who to be or how to be. We want you to be your best self. And that's what we're inviting to the party. And the third part in terms of accessibility, it's not just about price. Of course, we make the best of beauty accessible. And accessible also means wherever you want to shop. It also means accessibility to our C-suite, accessibility to our leadership team. There is no distance between us and our community.
I love that. That's really striking, really powerful. If you were to give, so you're on an amazing journey. You've been hugely successful running one of the America's most successful brands, as we talked about. I think it's something insane, like 20 consecutive.
21. Don't sell us short. 21 consecutive quarters of net sales
growth. Because that's what the grown-ups in the stock market always talk about, isn't it? Can you deliver consecutive quarters of growth? 21, ladies and gentlemen. That's really impressive. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to sort of younger marketers looking up at you and kind of think, oh, I want to do what she does, kind of thing? What would your advice be?
The first one is e.l.f. the rules. So when I started, I contacted my personal board of directors, marketing gurus, books, all the things. And everybody actually gave me consistent advice. And that consistent advice was to put e.l.f. in a box. Draw a persona, decide this person's name, what handbag she carries, what color shoes does she wear, all the things. Like, you have to start with a persona. You have to check the boxes. And everything about that felt so wrong to me. And I was having it was like me against myself mentally at that point, because I'm a new CMO in this new job.
Yeah.
I have to prove myself. And at the same time, my gut is manually overriding every expert in marketing that there is. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. e.l.f. is for every eye, lip, and face. There is such a personal connection between this brand and every audience that goes beyond gender, color, any kind of box that you could possibly check. So the key component is you absolutely need to have data. You need to have insights. You also need to have gut instinct. And that intuition is the star that shines the brightest. And in this case, that intuition said, e.l.f. the rules, go create your own.
Yeah.
And that would be my first piece of advice to everybody. The second piece of advice is a formula that I call the 5 C's. And these are really important, and they're important also in the order. The first one is curiosity. Put your head in all the places you've never been to before. Go hang out with people like Liquid Death, Chipotle. What is a beauty CMO doing with Liquid Death? You just saw why that's important.
Yeah.
Spend time with things you don't know. Have an infinite curiosity. The second C is courage. Because you could go have an obsession with Liquid Death, but do you have the courage to walk it into a boardroom and say, I'm going to turn this into a collaboration? So you have to have the courage to take those things you learn in the curiosity phase and bring them forward. The third thing is creativity. And especially in a world of AI, I think creativity at human scale is going to be one of the most important things on the road ahead. Think differently about how this could be done, how this problem can be solved. The fourth C is then conviction. And this one is really important. They're all really important. This one is probably the most important, because on your journey to take your ideas to action, a lot of people are going to try to throw you off your horse. And you have to have the conviction to carry it all across the finish line, unwavering.
Yeah.
And then the fifth C is community. Don't go at it alone.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who are good for you and people who are going to hold you up in all times, when the chart goes up and when the chart goes down.
Oh, that's amazing advice. I should say, by the way, congratulations on your Ad Week Creative 100. Talking about creativity as well. So that's brilliant. Lastly, just say you're very generous on LinkedIn with your wisdom. I mean, in this podcast as well. What motivates you to share so much of yourself out on LinkedIn? Because it's not as if you're not busy, shall we say?
The number of people who come up to me and express gratitude that they were able to pick up something that I put down and have it improve whatever project they were working on, whatever thing they were afraid to ask that now they're going to ask, is unbelievable. And every time somebody tells me that what I put out there impacts their life, I want to do it more and more.
Yeah.
And that is why I continue to do it, because there's obviously a lot of what we're doing is talking about e.l.f. and e.l.f.'s performance and e.l.f. success and all that stuff. And equally is also me giving people advice and also sharing the things I'm out there learning that maybe you don't have access to.
Yeah.
And it really has a positive impact on people. And the more I can give them, my hope is that I shine a light that turns on for more people than they ever had access to before.
Yeah. No, you really do. You do. I love your LinkedIn profile. It's fantastic. So anyone listening, watching, check it out. Go follow. It's well worth it. And in fact, actually, I did something similar about 2 years ago, just committing to daily posts on LinkedIn. And it's amazing, like the things that maybe you've experienced and some of the tough stuff as well. Just being open and honest, people really respect.
Well, what's crazy is most people don't recognize that it's also a social media platform. They dismiss it as, oh, it's just a professional place where people connect. There are 2 billion people on that platform. 2 billion. So my other advice to your audience is if you are not currently posting on LinkedIn, get started.
Get on. Yeah, I know. And if you work in B2B like me, it's insanely good as well in terms of like all your customers are watching what you're saying. So brilliant. That's a perfect place to end. Kory, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me. And make sure you thank your daughters on my behalf and tell them that I will be sending them a gift bag.
Honestly, I'm set for life now. Honestly, this is brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening or watching Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching, hit subscribe there as well. I'd also love to get a review. Reviews make a big difference on other people discovering the show. So please do leave a review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to contact me, you can do. I'm over on X @UncensoredCMO or on LinkedIn where I'm under my own name, John Evans. Thanks for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.